If you're teaching in person and you're struggling to divide your time between demonstrating on the mat, walking around the room, giving hands-on or verbal assists, as well as trying to remember the class sequence and give everybody a little bit of your attention, then I created this video for you. Because over the last 7 years, I've had to learn through a lot of trial and error how to give everybody the best in-person experience. Because the in-person experience is a really personal one. You know, you're walking around the room, you're giving students assists or verbal cues that are specific to them. That's why they come to those in-person experiences. Otherwise, they'd just go online if they wanted someone to demonstrate the whole time. So I thought it would be helpful to walk you through what I'm doing at different stages when I'm teaching through the class so that you can see and get a better idea of how to divide your time. So to begin with, for the warm-up, I teach in the evening, so I know that the majority of people have probably come in just after work or just after dropping the kids off at one of their activities or, insert potentially stressful situation. So they need a little bit of time to tune in with themselves, to kind of forget about the day so that they can just be present. So that's why during the warm-up, I like to demonstrate the whole time so that I can give everyone their space. And I also do this for students who are not used to my way of teaching. Say if I've got a new student that comes to the class, if I start walking around the room straight away, they might feel a little bit lost. They might need that visual guidance, at least for the first few minutes of practice. And also, if I start giving verbal cues or hands-on assists, people might not be ready for those. Some people, when they get a verbal assist, they feel like they're doing something wrong. If you go and say, oh, maybe just do this instead, people need to be warmed up to that, I find. And especially for hands-on assists, bodies need to be warm. So in the first few minutes of practice, I'm giving people their time because I'm not assuming that they're warm enough for me to go and put my hands on them. They also might not be ready for that either. It might feel a little bit too abrupt. So that's why for the warm-up, I'm demonstrating. Then with every class, I teach a different sequence, but one thing that is a constant is these sun salutations. And for me, this is the shift from the warm-up to when we start to pick up the pace. People sense that we're shifting gear in class. So I use the sun salutations to do that. And I typically teach 3 rounds. So the first round I will do demonstrating on the mat. This means that everybody has a visual guide. If they're unfamiliar with the sequence, if they've forgotten it and they just need a refresher, I'm there with them, showing them the steps and the breath cues. Then the second and third round of the sun salutations, I am walking around the room. This is when I'm starting to give verbal cues that are specific to each student, or I'm giving hands-on assists. This is also when I'm noticing key things. So when we move through the sun salutations, we are doing the foundational postures. So there's always key postures that I know people will struggle with. Chaturanga, plank, maybe they're pushing a little bit more than they need to in their up dog or their cobra. In downward dog, maybe they're forgetting to engage their hands. So these are the things that I'm always looking out for, because over the years I've found that these are the things to watch out for in the sun salutation sequences. So as well as this, I also know when I've worked with a student for a while, I get to know what poses they struggle with. So during the sun salutations, because it's that familiar sequence, I know which student has this problem with chaturanga, who might need a little bit of guidance. Or I know where this student could be engaging a little bit more in plank, or they're just doing it a bit passively and they need me to go and encourage them to activate a little bit more. So because I have that mental checklist of those students that I'm familiar with, that's also the time when I will go and check in with them, so they're starting to get that personalized experience. It's not just me demonstrating to a room where I'm disconnected from people. So during the second and third rounds of the sun salutations, that's what I'm starting to do. Then, depending on the sequence, if I'm introducing something new with more creative transitions or a variation of a posture that I've never taught before, I will go and demonstrate it at the front of the class so that people have that visual guide. Then as soon as we're in the posture, I will move off mat and start walking around the room again. Say if we're doing a sequence where there is a pose that we will do on the right side and the left side, I will always make sure that I go and give an assist on both sides to that student, so they're getting the same experience on both sides. Sure, I might change the assist that I give slightly based on, what I'm seeing on that side, but that's normally what I do. And then throughout that sequence, I'm doing a mixture of demonstrating. It might not always be at the front of the room, it might be within the rows of mats, making sure that I can be seen by everybody. And then I'm also, checking in with students who I know have certain difficulties, certain poses that I know they might need a reminder of, or there's certain students who they never, it doesn't matter how many times I tell them, they never use a block. And I go and I remind them and I'm like, there's no medals if you strain yourself to reach the floor. You're gonna have a better experience by using this block. And sometimes if I cue that to a student, say if I'm going over and I'm speaking to one student specifically, I will then also say the cue that I'm giving to them out loud and just watch as other people take it on board and start using those blocks. Because I find with things like that, nobody wants to go first, but when they see other people going first, everybody's like, oh yeah, maybe I will get a block. Maybe it is okay. So that's also an example of what I'm doing when I'm giving those personalized pieces of feedback, but also I'm giving them to the rest of the room if I feel like it's relevant. Then this takes us through what I call the core flow of the class. And if you're unsure what I mean by this, I did a sequencing video on this YouTube channel. I'll link it in the description so that you can go and see what I mean by these different definitions. But just quickly, I have the warm up, the core flow, and the warm down. So we're just still talking about the core flow here. So right at the end of the core flow, in all of the classes that I teach, I like to do a little bit of playtime. So depending on the theme of that class, it might be that we work towards a specific pose. It might be a back bend, it might be an arm balance, or it might be an inversion. So when I say playtime, I mean that I will demonstrate what we're going to be doing, and then I will give people a few minutes to go and play around with it themselves. I might give them a couple of demonstrations where if you're doing this pose, that could lead into this, you could play around with this, so that I give everybody that opportunity to take ownership over the class. So I demonstrate it first on mat, and then I walk around and I give individual assists, maybe it's verbal, maybe it's hands-on, but I really love giving this opportunity in my class so that everybody feels like they can do what they want to do. If we are doing something that's quite challenging, I will also make sure that I've offered something that is less challenging. Say if we're doing inversions, I will offer a wall assisted sequence. Maybe it's legs up the wall and different variations of that, because I always have all ages, as you probably do in your classes, all bodies, all experiences, so you do have to consider that. So that takes us to the end of the core flow, where everybody's pretty much maxed out at this point. So then I invite everybody to come back to the room if they're over at the wall, or just come back to focus, playtime is over. And then I start to demonstrate again the first posture or the first sequence of the warm down. So I do this to help signal that we're changing gear again. Also to give everybody time, especially in the warm down if we're using props, so that they can see where their props need to be arranged. I do find that's helpful. Then once I've got them into position, because we're slowing down in this portion of the practice, it gives me time to go and give more people more of my attention. So it may be that, I see somebody straining and they don't need to. So I go and get them a bolster if they haven't got one, and I remind them, this is the portion of the class where you can give yourself grace, relax. Well, every portion of the class you should give yourself grace, but particularly in a warm down, I like to remind people this is your time to relax now. So I'm looking out for things like that, or I'm giving hands-on assists, and then slowly, pose by pose, I'm guiding into shavasana. If there's anything that I feel people need a visual demonstration of, I will go and do a demo. But if not, then I'm usually just walking around the room, like staying within the rows so that I'm close to people. This also means that it's easier for me to just like jump in and give that assist and I'm not at the other end of the room. Then when we get to shavasana, I don't normally demonstrate this. I normally just say, come into shavasana. If anybody's unfamiliar, I will go over and just give them a little bit of an assist. Maybe put your legs here, put your arms here. If your lower back is feeling a little bit uncomfortable, try this. And then once everybody's in shavasana, I will give them a few moments. When I say moments, maybe 30, 45 seconds. And then I normally pick one person and I go and give a shavasana assist. This is quite a lengthy assist. And this is something that I was taught in my first training. And if you were never taught this, I will do a video on this because I think it's such a shame if you don't know how to give a really great assist in shavasana, because it can be an incredible gift that you can give to somebody. And because it is quite lengthy, I will always just pick one person. It normally takes me like 3 to 4 minutes. And this also means that everybody gets a really lengthy shavasana. Then at the end of class, I will return back to my mat so that when everybody opens their eyes and they sit back up, I'm there with them. So that is the whole class journey, everything that I'm doing at different stages. So just to do a quick recap. The warm-up, I'm demonstrating because I want to give everybody their space, give them time to be present. During the sun salutations, I do a combination of a demonstration so that everybody has the visual guide, but then I'm starting to move around the room as the pace is picking up. As we do those repetitive sequences, it's easier for me to walk around then. Then during the core flow, it's a combination of demonstrating the things that I think people need a visual guide for. Say if it's a tricky transition and I'm like, I know that I can verbally cue really clearly, but for those that also need the visual too, I'm going to be there for them. And then it's just that constant combination of demonstrating when I need to, personalized feedback, hands-on assist, verbal cues, and then also saying those cues out loud for anybody who might benefit from that. Then when we move into the playtime section, maybe you have this in your class, maybe you don't, but again, it's a combination of a demo and then walking around the room. Especially if I'm doing inversions, I've really got my eyes everywhere just for safety reasons, just making sure that everybody checks in with me if they're going to try anything so that I can assist them if they need. And then for the warm down, I'm going back to demonstrate and then I'm moving around the room as much as I can, getting ready for my shavasana assist, and then I'm back on my mat for the final parts of class. So I hope this breakdown has been helpful. Hopefully it's given you some new ideas or new ways that you can approach your classes so that you can give your students the best experience possible. Take care, and I'll see you next time.